All right, what's going on, people? Welcome back to the one podcast where we bring on different categories and different business owners, and pretty much, get to know them a little bit, right? Where they come from, get to know, how they chose their industries. Because I mean, honestly, like I always tell you guys, we do business with people we know, like, and trust. Okay, so the point of this podcast is to bring on different businesses, different categories of people to where, hey, maybe you can use their services and products. So I mean, that's the whole purpose of the show. So today I'm going to bring on Will Rasman. He's actually a wealth advisor. Guys, this guy knows his stuff, has been in the industry many years. um, Actually has a book out. I mean, I've never actually met somebody that actually has their own book. So that's amazing. Okay, so now I'll be bringing him on, Mr. Will Rasman.
Hey Jordy, good to see you.
How you doing, brother?
Doing well.
Thank you so much for coming on this show, man. Like I was just saying, a lot of people, there's different categories and businesses that a lot of people don't even know they exist sometimes. I'll be honest with you, I didn't even know anything about like the whole wealth advisor space, and I honestly don't know much about it. So I'm glad you made it, man.
Well, I'm glad that we can devote some time to talking about it because I think I'm super passionate about it. I think that you'll glean that from us just having a short conversation. So passionate about it that yeah, I wrote an entire book. I've also written articles for Kiplinger and Yahoo Finance, and I have I've basically worked in this industry my entire adult life. That's what I tell people. So,
Wow.
directly out of actually while I was in college and then directly out of college, this is all I do. This is, um, everything that I think about on a daily basis. Um, and yeah, I'm happy to, really honored to come on and share my knowledge.
Thank you so much. Now, the first question I ask all my guests is, why did you choose to become a wealth advisor?
Good question. So, uh, I grew up, this will probably touch upon some of your questions coming up here. So, uh, kind of just start from the beginning. So I grew up in the Midwest. I was born in Minnesota and I lived in Wisconsin and Iowa. Uh, I grew up in the hockey world, basically. So I started playing hockey when I was very young, like
Well,
3 or 4 years old. And that kind of brought me on a path of pursuing that. You get to the hockey world much just like in any other sports where you kind of decide whether or not you want to go to college and play or whether you want to go professional. And
mhm.
I decided to go the college route, and that was a smart decision because I was nowhere near good enough to play professionally. But what that took me to New York City, and uh, while I was there, I had the opportunity to intern at a company called Smith Barney, which kind of dates myself since Smith Barney doesn't really exist anymore. Um, Morgan Stanley actually bought them, uh, and so that brings me to kind of my beginnings, which was in May of 2008. And if you're anything like a student of the financial world or history, you know that 2008 was an interesting time in the world, especially in the world of finance. And so I kind
Mhm.
of got a front row seat to all that happened during that time when Fannie and Freddie were getting bailed out and Lehman Brothers files bankruptcy and AIG and all of the craziness with all of that. And I usually tell people that it kind of has given me a perfect storm of experience in a way where everything that I do today in my business and how I help people is based on that foundation that uh, you know sooner or later the markets will dislocate again.
Mhm.
We will go through another crash. Young people today, I speak to many of them, and many of them don't have never lived through a market crash.
Yeah.
um, and the older people remember them, but we have very short memories, right? And the market really hasn't made any sort of meaningful correction since that time. You can point to the COVID crisis, and there were some periods of volatility in 2013 and 2015, but that said, in 2008, from peak to trough, we went down 55%.
Wow.
The joke during that time was your 401k turned into a 201k. That was the reality of it. People lost half their stuff.
That's crazy.
And so I guess to kind of bring back to the heart of your question, in high school, I had a really interesting economics professor. His name is Mr. Noto. If you ever see this, what's up, Mr. Noto? He was so, he was kind of a dick, but I loved it. It was so, he was so funny and made the material so much fun. And I kind of recognized at that point in my life, which I think I count as a blessing, in that I really wanted to do something with the markets. So that's what I majored in college. I have my degree in economics. I do have my certified financial planner designation. And so, that really laid the foundation for me, where when I got to New York City, I knew exactly what I wanted to do, and I knew exactly what I wanted to study. And I've been really blessed with having that direction in my life, because I see so many young people struggling through, getting very generic business administration degrees or whatever it might be, and then getting out, into the real world and saying, what do I do
Yep.
with my life? And that's one of the places that I try and give back. Whenever I find young people, whether they've interned for me, or whether, they're working in similar industries, I try to give, guidance, because I do understand how difficult it is in today's world. And I think that part of that is, kind of these, what we call blessings in disguise in a degree, is that there's such a plethora of options that we're overwhelmed by them. And
Oh, for sure.
and that's one of the things that I actually write about in my book too.
Nice. So you said a teacher inspired you in a way?
Yeah, so in that class, you know, in your high school classes, and even
Yeah.
in college, they give you papers to write, right? So
Yeah.
write 5 pages, minimum of 5 pages on X, Y, or Z. And I was turning in, you know, college level papers, 20, 30 pages as a senior in high school.
Wow.
This teacher, and one of them I still have today. It was a paper on the history of oil prices, which is actually very topical for today.
Wow.
And a lot of what I wrote in that paper is kind of coming to fruition around the fact that the inelastic nature of oil prices is something that it can be a reckoning for economies, big
Yeah.
time. And one of the things that I talked about in there, and that has come to fruition, is that we've bifurcated basically our agricultural market in a way as well, because as you might know, a lot of our corn products today are turned into ethanol, which
Mm-hmm.
is, if you go to the gas station today, you'll see that, all of our gas may contain up to 10% ethanol. And what that's done is it's inflated the corn prices along with messing with our oil markets. And so, and it gets very, very complicated. And one of the things that I like to do is try and simplify things for people. And all that to say is that the world has become increasingly complex. I've been telling people, the world isn't what it was a year ago, much less 10 years ago. And so that's one of the things that I write about in my book, is really using today's tools to solve today's problems, and not relying on things that may or may not have worked in the past, because we are in such a fast changing, more violent, um, more interconnected global economy that really doesn't care what you think about it. Um, and 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 I mean that with as much empathy and love as I possibly can. But I think that people, the first step to fixing a problem is admitting that there is one. And
Mm-hmm.
so this new interconnected global economy is something that uh, we really need to come to terms with, and wrestle with using today's tools. And that's what I outline partially in my book.
Okay. Now, Now, I pretty much understand what you're trying to say, but how does all that, for example, matter to like the average person, right? Because, I mean, first of all, what does a wealth advisor do in the first place?
Sure.
I guess so we can kind of get a context to what how you can help somebody, right?
Sure. So one of the things that I write in, I think it was in one of my articles actually, I write, you could ask 1,000 financial advisors, what is a financial advisor? And you would get 999 different answers.
I've heard of
Um,
that.
and because, you know, there are so many people that it's such a, a saturated space that there's so
Hmm.
many people that consider themselves financial advisors that aren't necessarily advising, they're selling, right? So that brings us into the whole discussion about what's selling versus what is advising. And the way that I usually uh, kind of break this down for folks is that there's what's called the suitability rule and what's called the best interest rule. And so a suitability rule would be like, hey, is Jordy suitable for eating 3 double cheeseburgers for dinner tonight? You're suitable for that. You can do it, but is it in your best interest?
Of course.
Right? So there's folks out there that consider themselves financial advisors that are just gauging as to whether or not you're suitable for the product that they're putting out there. Where there's folks like me that usually have this designation that I have, CFP after name, that are bound by a fiduciary duty to do what's in the best interest of clients always. And so that's where the rubber meets the road for me as far as a wealth advisor is, do you have a fiduciary duty to your clients? And uh, and are you using an open infrastructure to help people? Or are you only uh, kind of handcuffed by a certain set of products, whether it be by the company that you work for, or uh, you know the way in which you do business? That to me, what a true advisor is. And so one of the things that I do to help people is I start with what I call a co-discovery meeting. And in that, we sit down and we go through about, I don't know, it's like 50 to 60 questions. It usually takes about 90 minutes. And it's all of the things that money touches, which is like everything, right? So
Yeah.
it's your interests and your values and your relationships and your hobbies and your goals and everything. And so from that, what I help folks do is I put that on one sheet of paper, and it looks a little bit like a mind map. And what I tell people is this is a good snapshot in time to plan from, right? Because if you want to figure out where you're going to go, you have to figure out where you are first. And so in the whole planning process, I mean, there's advisors from different walks of life do things in different ways, but I find that giving someone an all-encompassing snapshot of where they currently are helps us define the discussion of going forward, which is where do you want to go? And I think that that's where most people fall flat. Is most people can tell you where they are, but if you really ask them, if you really tighten the screws on them, they don't know where they're going. And
Very true.
um, and that's where I really provide value for folks, is I help them define their goals, and then from there, um, helping them to reach them. And so I do that through, I have a variety of different creative, um, kind of out of the box financial ideas, systems that I utilize to help people get from point A to point B. And, some of them, have to do with investments. Some of them have to do with taxes. Some of them have to do with, passing wealth from one generation to the next. And those are what I call part of the advanced plan. So I usually tell people, there's 5 things that most people care about. You want to make smart money decisions. You want to mitigate the impact of taxes. You want to take care of the people that you love. You want to protect what you have from creditors, predators, unjust lawsuits, severe market declines. And you want to give to some version of a charitable cause, whether that's a church or charity or whatever it might be. But the important part about those five, this is what I write in my book, is that you can't do 2 through 5 without doing number one well. And that's kind of where I come in as the quarterback of the financial household, is saying, okay, this is how we're going to do number one well first. How are we going to make smart money decisions starting from now, moving forward? And I do that again. I have a variety of different tools. I don't think we need to get into the details at this point in time, but that's kind of an overarching overview.
Okay. Now, now I do want to ask about what some tips might be though, right? So, because I'm big on this, honestly, I'm very big on this, and I love having these type of conversations because people don't understand that even though you might make $500 a week, you can still make it. You know, it's just if you're spending $200 here, $100 here, and by the end of the week you're leaving $50 to yourself, you know, I understand bills have to be paid, but hey, maybe you don't have to go out every Friday night, right? Or maybe you don't have to buy yourself a new outfit every Friday night to go out every Friday night, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
what are some tips that you, for example, because I've heard it both ways, right? Don't be the guy that doesn't want to get a cup of coffee and save, and then I've heard the other angle where it just focus on more money, right? So, where would you fall maybe?
So that's a great question, and I find myself, kind of giving different answers based upon, who I'm talking to and what they're
Exactly.
kind of where
Yep.
they are. Um, I've always this is my kind of a semi joke that I like to tell, but there's a lot of truth and humor I find in that general advice is not advice.
Hmm.
There's people memorize general phrases to say to people in need, but there's not a whole lot of wisdom in that.
Yeah,
So what
exactly.
I like to do is work with people on a one-on-one basis to be able to help them work through some of these issues. But that said, I think that one place that people can start is reframing the conversation, um, going from a budgeting plan to a spending plan. And I
Hmm.
think for a lot of folks, that moves it from, the glass is half empty to the glass is half full, right? How am
Hmm.
I going to spend what I have in the most efficient way in order to meet all my wants and needs while still having some left over? And the best way that I found to help people with that is what I call the swipe challenge. So
Hmm.
I think that in today's world, we are absolutely addicted to pulling out that piece of plastic. And it used to be swiping it through the thing, and now it's you insert the
Now it's
chip, or
insert.
where you tap it, or what do you do? And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because what the problem is that all of those transactions continue to add up. And if you actually track it, and so this is a really easy way to do it, and just be like, every time that you swipe or tap or insert or whatever, just put a tally down, whether it's on your phone or write it on your hand or a piece of paper, and see how many you're doing a week. And then after you get to the end of the week, try and cut that down by a half the next week. And if
Hmm.
you could get down to, somewhere around 5 swipes a week, then I would say that you probably have a pretty good control on your spending. But if
Nice.
you really do it, honestly, people will find that they're somewhere between 30 and 40, 50 swipes a week. And that's where everything bleeds out. You know, to me, at the end of the day, I'm not sure if it's the best thing for you to have, a double venti macchiato at Starbucks. I don't know. I just don't. I'm not in your head, right? I
Hmm.
don't know what
Of
your day
course.
to day looks like. I don't know how many cups of coffee you have over the course of the day. But what I do know is that every time that you swipe that card, that's a debit from your net worth. It's not a
Hmm.
credit. You're not making money that way. And so the least number of times that we can do that is one way to help curb the spending habit.
Nice. So when it goes to the spending part of it, right, we got to spend on the right things, right? What are some things that you recommend? And I want to kind of put into perspective because I want to really aim this conversation to 95% of the world, right? Those people that are maybe struggling to start their own business or maybe struggling to maybe create some residual income or just struggling, right? Maybe making 500 to $1,000 a week. We know now that $1,000 a week sometimes doesn't, it barely pays the bills. So, um, what would be some, I don't know if you want to call it investments or strategies to kind of, have some compound interest start coming in or things like that?
So yeah, there's a very common tactic in my industry called a PIP plan, periodic investment plan. Um,
Hmm.
that's for people that are fortunate enough to have an income that allows them to not spend everything. Um, it's I think it's extremely smart to have. We can set it up nowadays with ACH withdrawals where, whether it's $100 a week or $50 a week or whatever it is, have that go into an investment account, and you pretend as if it never even was
Doesn't
there,
exist. Yep.
right? And so I think that's a very good idea. For some folks, that just doesn't work. And so I usually like to tell people, I use what's called the bucket approach. It's been used for decades in my industry, and basically the idea behind that is you want to fill up all three of your buckets, but pretend that your buckets are stacked
Hmm.
on top of one another. So on your top bucket, that's your emergency fund. And people in my industry usually recommend that you have 3 to 6 months of living expenses in that first bucket. Depending on where
Hmm.
you are in your life season and how many kids
Hmm.
you have and how many people count on you, that bucket's going to be bigger or smaller depending on all those
Hmm.
extenuating circumstances. But after that bucket fills up, the money or the next bucket that should fill up is your medium term bucket. And these are the things that we talk about more, is quality of life things like buying a home, or um, you know a boat, or sending kids to college, or the things that aren't your necessities today but are medium term goals. And then after that bucket fills up a little bit, then you can start filling up the longer term bucket, which is your IRAs and your 401ks and all of the things that we consider traditionally as retirement money. But I argue in my book, just what does retirement even mean anymore, given that we're all
Hmm.
living longer lives, and we're living not only longer lives but living further into life in a more fulfilling way. We know people that, just speaking from personal experience, that are in their 70s that are still perfectly healthy, that are still working, still want to work, still have all their faculties. Um,
And
and
barely have money in the 401k.
yeah, there you go. Exactly. But but that said, and this is again what I go into talk in my book about, is that the onus, the responsibility for our future selves is more and more continuing to fall on our own shoulders. So
Hmm.
back in the day, right, they used to have a thing called pension plans. Young people don't even know what that means nowadays.
I know.
But it used to be, that you
A
would
thing.
work for a certain corporation for 20 or 30 years, and then they would pay you, a fixed income for the
Hmm.
rest of your life.
Hmm.
Um, as lifespans have gotten longer, and as corporate structures have shifted, pensions have gone away. I mean, the Social Security is projected right now to run out in 2035. That's not that long from now. I usually tell people, if you're under the age of 40 or 45, I would expect Social Security to not be there.
Hmm.
That's what you have to do. There's no guarantee that you're going to get it. And so, all of these kind of market-based factors are pushing us in a direction where the person where your financial future falls onto is your own shoulders. And it wasn't always like that. And
Yeah,
I
you're
think
right.
that people need to start to being mentioned earlier, the first step into solving a problem is admitting that there is one. So accept that fact. And then from there, what do we start to do to build our financial foundation? And, uh, going back to your question, I think that, you know, that bucket approach, while, it's very simple, I think paints a good picture for folks on prioritization, right? It's the emergency fund, then a few medium-term goals, and then you got to save for your future self. And that's one of the things that I love talking about and toying around the idea of having discussions with your future self.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what does that actually look like?
Exactly.
You can actually do it. You can actually write it down and say, okay, what does Jordy at age 60, if you could talk to him today, what would he say that he needs?
Freedom.
You can answer that question, right?
Freedom. Yep.
Yeah.
I know the answer.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Now, why do you think that people struggle to put money into those buckets? Because I get you, I'm with you, but people struggle.
So we live in in a a world of comparison. Whether you want
Mm,
to call it keeping up with the Joneses or whatever it is, that's just how our world works. And by the way,
mm-hmm,
it works that way for a good reason. And as we all know, we evolved from hunter gatherers that were trying to make just trying to get enough food and have an adequate shelter in order to make it till
mm-hmm,
tomorrow. And the reason that comparison is so important to us is because when we used to look out the window, we used to look at our neighbor and look at him and say, okay, if he's planting his corn a different way, or if he's able to gather more berries than I am, I want to know how he's doing that so that
mm-hmm.
I can better myself, right?
I never thought
But
about it like that.
yeah, and this is kind of what I go through in my book a little bit is the evolution of how we got to where we are today, right? That's important. It's
It
important to know
is. It
those
is.
things. And so going back to my metaphor, which I think has a lot of basis in truth, is that if you're looking out the window and looking at your neighbor and trying to pick up on the things that he's doing right because he's doing better than you, that's an okay thing. But after we've replaced the window with a TV, and we're now looking into the window of someone else's reality that isn't actually real, we've warped reality.
Mm-hmm.
So you've now looked into your TV, and your mind thinks that you're looking out the window, but you're not. You're actually looking into the Kardashians' living room, and they've got all these things. Your subconscious automatically tells you that you need all of them, and that's where we've gone off the rails as a society. It's we are not. I think I don't know who it was, but somebody really smart, whether it was Einstein or somebody like that,
Mm-hmm.
said, compare not yourself to someone else, but who you were yesterday. That's where it lies. Is to be a better person than you were yesterday. It's not to compare yourself to the person that's on the TV or the person that's driving around the Ferrari or whatever it is, because that's not your reality. What your
For sure.
reality is being better than you were yesterday.
For
And
sure.
let's be honest, we all got a lot of work to do.
Facts. Now, what's one thing in your career that you struggled with clients?
Oh, that's a good question. So, I mean, I think with any service-based business, managing expectation is always super
Mm-hmm.
difficult. And so, one of the things that I've learned to do is to kind of document where folks' expectations lie now, because it's just inevitable. The market's going to do something, or some extenuating life event is going to happen. God forbid somebody dies, somebody goes through divorce, somebody gets in a car accident, the market crashes. There's all sorts of things that are outside of our control,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just inevitable. When that happens, people automatically switch to an emotional reaction. And as you well know, and I do, I mean, people have known this for decades, but it's really difficult to put into practice, which is emotions and money don't mix.
Nope.
The worst time to be making knee-jerk reactions is during the middle of that crisis. The idea is to be prepared for the crisis before it happens, right? I always tell people I'm very good at creating a bulletproof vest, financial one,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't do you any good if you've already come to me with a gunshot wound. You're going to throw that bulletproof vest on and be like, why am I still bleeding? Be like,
Mm-hmm.
well, you were supposed to put it on before you got shot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's where kind of the rubber meets the road for me, anyways, with managing expectations for folks, is that the time to prepare for crisis is now when the sun is shining, not after the clouds
Mm-hmm.
have already rolled in. And
Yep.
so, um, and that can get difficult because there are, as you know, and as we all know, there, are tons of unexpected things that pop up, things that we never imagined would happen, but
Mm-hmm.
they do. And so, and that's where, the basis of my company, Prosper Point, prepare, protect, plan. That is what I do for folks, is that let's be prepared for whatever might happen.
Mm-hmm.
And if we are, how much more, uh, how much more confidence can you go into the crisis when it inevitably does happen?
Yep.
And
Now, what I
that's
want to ask you, sorry to cut you off, but
good.
um, you pretty much play in the markets then, right?
So yeah, I consider myself a money manager by trade. So I'm doing trading. I operate with basically 6 different strategies that I've come up with over the past, 15 years or so. Um, I have a lot of experience, a lot of smart people that I've learned from. But the idea is that, uh, you know, there are certain levers that we can push and pull given certain market conditions, right? And all of it is mathematics. It's all rules based. None of this has to do with gut feeling, because at the end of the day, right, as I've said before, the market doesn't care what I think. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
care what you think. All respect. The
No,
market's
for
just going
sure.
to do what it's going to do, right? And so having a plan for what that might be is where the rubber meets the road, I believe. And so there are certain strategies that I employ where you can, you know, stomp on the gas, you can let off the gas, you can stomp on the brake when conditions dictate. And so,
Mm-hmm.
funneling capital into the strongest areas of the global marketplace, unless even those areas aren't doing well, then money goes to cash, is what I do. And that's how, at the end of the day, this is not something I didn't make this up. I'm not, some ridiculous genius. This is how really rich people have been managing their money for decades, centuries even. But the problem is that, us regular folks haven't had the access to strategies like that just because we don't know they exist. It's not because, we're not as smart as anybody else. It's just because we just don't have the awareness. And so that's one of the things that I am super passionate about, is bringing these, you know, fairly complex, sophisticated strategies to regular folks, managing their money as if, like the global super rich do.
Mm-hmm.
And that is that, really rich people make money, in up, down, and sideways markets. Um, that's just how it works, and they have the ability to do that because they have people that are managing their money for them that know which levers to pull at times
Mm-hmm.
where the market dislocates. And so that's kind of like the money management part of it. And then there's also, it's been said, wealth management is more than just money management, and that speaks to the other, sides of the financial coin that um, that are related to money, but aren't necessarily only investment related. So, things like insurance, estate planning, tax planning, um, retirement planning, all of these, you know, other things that are, not just investment related. Those are the things that I can consult on, and I have
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people that I can refer in to help
Mm-hmm.
out with those things. And that's why I can kind of consider myself the financial quarterback. So, someone comes to me and I can diagnose their situation and say, okay, well, you don't have a will yet. Maybe it's time to go see a trust and estates attorney.
Mm-hmm.
You have you have real estate that God forbid something happened. You need liability insurance on that. There's
Mm-hmm.
a variety of different things that can pop up when you're having those discussions. But as I said, I'm a certified financial planner. I have a fiduciary duty to make sure that all of those things are touched upon. And so, to answer your question, while I consider myself, yes, a peer money manager, that's not all that I'm talking to clients
Mm-hmm.
about.
So money manager, and just so the audience understands, like you keep talking about markets and things like that, but it's like I'm trying to understand myself. Um, you tell me pretty much where to put my money in places that you think might make me a return, as well as also show me how to maybe manage. That pretty much what it is
Sure.
in
So,
simple terms.
yeah, so I am a discretionary money manager, which means that the clients that I have pay me a fee to manage their money, and I do so on a discretionary basis, which means that I
But it's
fiduciary.
not like an accountant though, right?
No, no.
No.
So,
Okay.
so here to in a very kind of low,
Uh-huh.
uh, very elementary
Explain it to
way.
a fifth grader.
Yeah, or even younger. What it is so folks that have, say, an IRA, right? I custodian my client assets at a company called Interactive Brokers. So
Uh-huh.
Interactive Brokers is a huge multi-billion-dollar company,
Uh-huh.
right, that provides me with a trading platform to trade that client's money on their behalf.
Okay.
So they're paying me to manage those assets, a fee. They're paying me a percentage of those assets
Uh-huh.
to manage them based upon their risk tolerance, their target return, their max drawdown, and their correlation tolerance. All of these different things that come into play, so that I'm managing it in their best interest.
Yeah.
Makes
Okay.
sense. So,
Yep.
uh, I have some clients that have their trust accounts with me, right? That have $1 million in a trust. I manage that. But there's other folks that have $25,000 in an IRA or $5,000 in an IRA. So all of that goes on to my platform per se, and I'm managing those accounts in similar ways. They're not going to have exact same allocations, but the 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 similarities are going to be there around the things that they're invested in, and those are my systems that I've built, right? So a lot of them
Okay.
are invested into common stock and ETFs. So an
So
ETF
are
is?
they invested already? Yeah, yeah. I'm well aware of ETFs. But so they're already invested before they get to you and you're just managing it, or are you also going into ETFs and stocks and things like that?
It's it's both. I mean, there
Oh,
will be people that come to me with say a portfolio of mutual funds that
okay.
I'll tell them, here's the amount of risk that you're taking on, and here's the long and short term risks, and here's what I would do differently. Or they're it's actually coming up very common nowadays that people have large cash positions. I ran into somebody, or I got a referral to somebody the other day, that has $400,000 sitting in their checking account, just
Wow.
because the business built up that amount of cash over time. And as you know, interest rates are awful, so they're not getting anything for that money, right? So
Hmm.
giving it some market exposure can go a long way. Even just 8% on $300,000 is a lot of money.
And would you recommend ETFs because they're safer?
So the way that
Or
I
how do you
use
feel about that?
ETFs is in a tactical way. So
Hmm.
I'll go in and out of ETFs, usually index linked ETFs. So an ETF that's
Hmm.
linked to the Dow Jones, or the Russell 2000, or Australia, or Japan, or treasuries, or real estate, or gold. Basically anything that you can think of. I'll
Hmm.
go in and out of those funds based upon prevailing market trends. So I consider myself a trend follower. So at the
Hmm.
end of the day, what does that mean? It means
Follow
that,
the trend.
there you go. It means funneling capital into the strongest areas of the global marketplace. Unless those areas aren't doing well, then I leave money in cash.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that I have that bias is, again, I started in 08. Remember? 2008, I was on Wall Street. I saw the ticker tape, and
Wow.
everything on the ticker tape was red, right? Except for like two things. What were they?
I
Gold
have no idea.
and
Go on.
the Swiss franc, basically. Those are
Wow.
the only things that held up in a declining market.
Wow.
So where I'm coming from is that, yeah, the market is going to go down, but that doesn't mean that you have to go down with it.
Mm-hmm.
There again are certain levers that we can pull in order to shift money into other assets. Like, here's what I usually tell people. Most people have what I call is an always be buying bias, right? They just want to buy everything all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And this is including spending, but also investing. I
Mm-hmm.
want real estate, I want gold, I want large cap stocks, I want Apple, I want Google, I want Tesla, I want it all. I want to put it all in a portfolio. It's like, yeah, so wouldn't that be great? But we know as enlightened individuals that all the time is not the best time to own everything. There are
That's true.
certain times in which it can be extremely profitable to own some things. And so the idea is we need to figure out how and when those things present themselves. And you can do that. What I found out how to do that based on algorithmically. I can use mathematics to say, what are the best performing assets as of now and as of 3 months ago, and funnel capital into those areas so that, they say that the best predictor of near term future results is near term past results. Does that make sense? So if
Oh,
I
for
draw
sure.
a line on a paper and I cover up half of it, you can tell me where the line is probably going to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the law of momentum. That's that's how the universe works.
So I want to ask you something.
Sure.
Right now, in April of 2022, what are some things that, in your opinion, the average person or the wealthy person can invest to, can go into? What are some good assets that you think right now
So as
that
of
we can go
right
into?
now, my ETF program is invested in gold in Latin America. So symbol GLD and symbol ILF. So I rebalance that one on a quarterly basis. I'll do it again in June.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Australia has been actually pretty strong as of late. But what I'm seeing a ton of lately, which is actually really concerning, is a lot of people with really large fixed income positions. So if you've got a lot of bonds in your portfolio, you're probably hemorrhaging uh, pretty rapidly right now, and that has to do with what the Fed is doing with interest rates. So there's an inverse relationship between bond prices and interest rates. If interest rates go up, then bond prices go down.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how it works. And so as they're continuing to raise interest rates have nowhere to go but up. And
Mm-hmm.
with the inflation numbers that are coming out right now, the
Yeah, it's
yields on
crazy.
bonds at 3 or 4%, it's a really precarious position to be in. And so, yeah, those are what the worst performing, areas of the market are, and what are the best right now, in my opinion. I'm a really big precious metals fan right now, but I'm also, buying a lot of energy stocks for clients. CF is one that has gone. I think I've got like an 80% gain in that one. Um,
Wow.
there's a couple others, and if people want to reach out to me, obviously I can. I guess the important thing to know about me is that I'm an open book. It's not. I
Yeah.
don't have some sort of black box platform that, like, you have to put your money in here and then you'll just don't know what's going to happen, but you're going to make money. It's like, no,
Yeah.
everything that I do, I'll tell you exactly how I do it. I'll do it all the way
Yeah.
down to the Excel spreadsheets that I use if you want to know it. The
Yeah.
problem is that most people, well, that's not a problem. I think it's actually a good thing, but most people just want to know what time it is. They want to know how the watch
Mm-hmm.
works.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm happy to tell people how the watch works, but at the end of the day, I'm looking at ILF and GLD right now.
Nice. Nice. All right. And who's been like your most important professional mentor in this industry?
It's a good question. Um, one of the things that I've said a lot, and I kind of alluded to in my book, is that it's kind of like, as far as people to look up to,
Hmm.
most I find a lot of people in my industry say names like Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and all this, and it's like, dude, those guys made their money in the most profitable time you could possibly be a businessman. The 1980s were the bee's knees, and
I
I'm using
heard that.
an old term on purpose here. As I mean, you could throw a dart at a dartboard and make money in the 80s. I mean, aside
I
from the
heard that.
flash crash and a few oil shocks, it was good going. There was very little war in the world. We didn't have the global interconnected economy yet. The internet was barely there. Um, and juxtapose that with today, it's a completely different marketplace. So what I usually tell people is, okay, if you've got a financial advisor with 50 years of experience, that's great. I'm sure there are tons of people that do very good work with 50 years of experience.
Hmm.
But be very weary that those people that have been in the business for that long, should be taking their own advice fairly soon here and getting out. If not,
Hmm.
then what does that say about them? And B, they're operating usually on structures that are just way different today.
Outdated.
It didn't used to be that someone sneezed in Japan and the market went down. It didn't used to be like that. And today it's all connected. Everything's all
Wow.
so. I mean, I look more towards some of the more like disruptive folks today. People like Gary Vaynerchuk, Simon Sinek, the people that are using the
Yeah.
today's technology,
Wildness.
the innovative ness of that you can with today's world
Yeah.
in making change and having impact. Um, so that said, I've had a lot of really good people that have I've worked at Merrill Lynch, I've worked at Deutsche Bank, I've traded all sorts of really complicated instruments. I've worked with a lot of really great people. I'm not going to say all their names on here, but
Hmm.
that's not to say that you know again, I don't mean to disparage folks that made all their money in the 80s. Good for you. I'm just saying, I don't know how all of that translates into today.
Yeah,
And
it's different
if I
times.
were you, I would want someone like me on your side rather than somebody who is resting on the laurels of things that they've done in the past.
For sure. Now, I want to ask you, how do you feel about debt?
It's a great question. Um, so our I mean, the way that our economy works, that is inevitable. Um, it's if you just look at the real estate world in itself. Like if you came to me, right? Jordy comes to me and says, "You know what, Will? I want to buy $1 million worth of stocks and bonds, right? But I only want to give you $200,000." I would be
One
like,
word.
"Get out of my office, right? There's no possible way I'm going to do that." But we do it all the time in the real estate world. And then we wonder why we have such inflated real estate prices.
Hmm.
So my point in that being is that debt is a necessary evil to the way that the system is set up right now. Do I think it'll always be this way? No, I don't. I think that one way or another, the market will correct itself, and uh, and we will need to deleverage our economy one way or another.
Yeah, for
Um,
real. It's too easy, yo. I got
but
100,000 sitting in my wallet right now. Like, what the heck? Imagine how much other people like. There
yeah,
has to be like a bubble that bursts, right?
and you're hitting the nail on the head and speaking my language. So I think that there's sooner rather than later there's going to be some version of a reckoning with especially all of these inflated assets.
For
Um,
sure.
but that said, um, you know we play the game with the rules that are put out in front of us, right? And so,
Yeah.
I always tell people, you know, if you can buy things with other people's money,
Do it.
do it, because the way that interest rates have been in the past 20 years, if
Mm-hmm.
not longer, is like it, the arbitrage on it. If you can go and
Free
borrow
money.
money at 3 and I can make you 10 on it, there's 7% of arbitrage in there, right? That's not a small thing. That's how rich people stay rich. They
Mm-hmm.
spend other people's money. They don't spend their own. And so, um, yeah, and again, I don't think it's going to be that way forever, but got to make hay while the sun's shining.
Yeah.
And I think, and I really do think that there's going to be a reckoning in the debt world.
Yeah.
Especially with where interest rates are, with the inflation numbers that are coming out. Um, it's I think it's going to get pretty crazy. Also, the other thing that people I think overlook about that kind of perfect storm of things is that we have 18,000 people a day in this country retiring.
Mm-hmm.
And what do people that are retiring need? They need fixed incomes, right? They need to be able to know that they can pay for their stuff, whether it's 3-4 grand a month, whatever it is. And Social Security is going to run out.
Mm-hmm.
People don't have pensions anymore. People haven't been putting into their 401ks and their IRAs. And they can't get any yield at banks. You can't get anything for CDs or bonds or any of these safe investments. So what are they going to do? Inevitably, they're going to try their hand in the stock market,
Mm-hmm.
which I believe is a big reason why the stock market is as inflated as it is today. It shouldn't be this high. And a lot of that, of course, has to do with the Fed printing 70% of dollars in circulation in the past 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
But it also has to do with the fact that they've kept interest rates so artificially low that people are starved for growth. When people are starving, when people are hungry, they make dumb decisions.
Yep.
Ask my wife. Right? So I mean, it's like, I joke about it, but it's a serious issue
Yeah.
and one that I am ready, and I say this with total sincerity, that I'm ready to help people through, because it's coming.
Now, there's a lot of like people out there that now try to dabble in the stock market themselves, right? I was one of them, and I was losing money. I went on an MLM, and I just kind of picked up their education platform. What do you say to those people? Because it in my opinion now, knowing what I know, it seems pretty dumb to do that versus just giving it to a professional.
Sure. So I always, I like to tell people, to work within, their risk tolerance at the end of
Yeah.
the day. And, I think that's kind of an overused term, um, but it's really, it's the one that we have to work from right now. And
Yeah.
so, what I find people that are doing, that are quote unquote dabbling in the stock market,
Hmm.
is like, here's an average conversation. Okay, so what things have you investing in lately? Oh, well, I bought Tesla. Okay, why did you buy Tesla? Well, my neighbor got one. And have you seen those things? They're really, really cool. Like, I got inside of it. I played with all the things. It's just really well made. Plus, you don't have to spend on gas, and think about all gas prices and blah, blah, blah. And then they go off and list all these reasons, these emotional reasons why Tesla is the good buy.
Hmm.
And it's like, guess what, dude? The market doesn't care about any of that stuff. The market could care less that your neighbor bought a Tesla.
Yeah.
What the market's going to do what it's going to do. If you look at Tesla right now, so one of the things that I look at is PE ratio, right? Price to earnings.
Hmm.
Another way to think about PE ratio is the number that it denotes is the number of years people are willing to prepay for earnings. Does that make sense? So it's the price divided by earnings. So how many number of years are you willing to prepay for earnings? I mean, the average stock right now in the market is trading at a 31 PE. That means that the person that's buying that stock is willing to prepay for the next 31 years of earnings.
Before they get earnings, you're saying?
Yeah. Before the
Wow.
earnings ever come in.
Wow.
It makes zero sense. So
Yeah, that doesn't seem smart.
the long term average for for the cyclically adjusted price earnings ratio is the one that I follow. Robert Shiller, he's a Yale economist, came up with it. It's actually a genius metric, but it adjusts price, it adjusts earnings and price for interest rates and inflation. And so what that's currently sitting, I'm going to look it up right now. So that's currently sitting at 37. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so people are willing to prepay. One other way to think about that, and it's not a wrong way to think about it, is that people are willing to pay for the next 37 years of earnings. If you look at Tesla right now, its current PE ratio is 201.
Wow.
People are willing to pay for the next 201 years of Tesla's earnings.
So if that doesn't, there's probably other things that we could probably invest in, you're saying. Right.
I'm saying that there are smarter things that you can find if you have, and this is what I call the 3 T's of investing. If you've got the time, if you've got the technique, and you've got the temperament. If you've got those 3 things, you can do it yourself. Don't pay somebody like me. But if you are missing one of those 3, you need some help, which is if you don't have enough time, if you don't have the technique, meaning that you haven't learned enough about it, or you don't have the temperament. And I find
probably the temperament is probably the hardest one.
That's what I find is the T that is missing the most is the temperament one. People are way too emotionally attached to money decisions in order to make correct ones.
100%. 100%.
201 years. So go buy some Tesla stock and then see how it does over the next 200 years. That's what I'm saying. But the market, one of the things that I've told people is that the market has a longer term time horizon than you do, right? If you look back, and people always like to quote statistics. So the market on average returns 9% a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's since 1871. That's over the past 150 years. Do you have 150 years to write out your investment to see if it returns you 9% a year? Nobody does. If you go to shorter time frames, that number gets lower and more volatile. So if you put your dollar in and say, okay, I want to make sure that I get at least 5% on my money within 5 years, you know the percentage of time that happens? Less than 50. There are certain periods of time where you could put your dollar in and not even get your dollar back 20 years later.
Wow.
Where you start makes so much of a difference, right? If you put your dollar in 1999 and you took it out in 2009, that
made money.
That 10-year period, no, you lost money.
Oh, wow.
Because the tech crash happened and then 2008 happened, you'd have way less than $1.
Wow.
And that's over 10 years. So I say that to impress upon the idea that people have very, very shorter time frames than the market does. The market is going to be around forever. It's going to go on forever. We don't. The shorter time periods are what are more important to us. What happens today, what happens next week, what happens next month. And that's why I believe my systems help people through that. Because as you know, as an insurance person, what's the worst plan that you can sell somebody? The one that they don't do.
Oh, yeah.
The one they don't pay. The one they don't need.
Or the one they don't have, right?
Yeah. Or the one that they give up on, or whatever it is, right?
Yep.
The idea is that you have to be able to see it through. And the thing with money, especially with money decisions, is that people, when faced with pain, will run away from pain far quicker than they'll run towards pleasure. Mm-hmm. And that's in essence what I do day in and day out.
That was great. That was really, really great. That definitely helped me understand for sure. Now I do want to ask you, what would your parents describe what you do? How would your parents describe what you do?
Well, I think my dad has a pretty good handle on it. He's actually a banking executive. He's a chief marketing officer of a credit union up in Jacksonville, Florida.
Nice.
So he gets it. I think that he just works in kind of a more conservative world, and so I think that it intrigues him, and I think that he'd be able to explain it to you pretty, similarly to the way that I explained it to you. Um, my mom is a little bit more on the. She actually lives in Greenville, Wisconsin now. Um, and she's been a homemaker her whole life, and so um, she, she's a smart lady for sure. But she's actually a client of mine too. So I think that she would explain it. Um, Probably, actually, she might do it better than I can because she
Yeah.
would use
Wow.
regular words. Um, yeah,
That's funny.
that's a great question though. I actually kind of want to feel that out. Maybe I'll call them
Yeah, for
tomorrow and just
real.
be like,
For
"Hey,
real.
how would you explain what I do?"
For real. Now, if you can go back and give your 18-year-old self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Don't date that girl in college. No.
No way.
Um,
Believe it or not, guys, I know we're joking about that, but the girl you date and marry does have a big impact
oh
on
yeah,
where you end up.
absolutely,
Just want to throw that out there
absolutely,
for the
yeah.
audience.
No, I wouldn't say that that was. I'd say be okay with failure.
Mm. Preach, boy. I love that. That's mine. I mean, I've always been okay with it, but yeah, that's it.
Okay,
That's where you get the best
or to
experiences.
maybe say it in a more palatable way that my 18-year-old self would get it is be okay with accepting defeat.
Hmm.
Right? You don't have to win every single little thing all the
It
time.
turns into an experience.
Exactly. Right?
Yep. Now, I know you've been in this space for the past 15 plus years or whatever, but have you held any other jobs?
Yeah. So when I was
What? So
in
hold on, let me finish the question. What has been your least favorite job you held to make it interesting?
um well, that's probably my first one. I was a cashier at a grocery store when I was 15 and 16. Um I don't know. I just don't deal well with rude people.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah.
like I understand people have bad days and all of that, but I guess I'm just one of those people who's very sensitive to knowing when people are projecting out their garbage onto me. And it's just like that was a huge wake up call around like, there's just some people that are just going to be rude to you no matter what. And you know, it's like, are you going to let it ruin your day, or are you going to? Because there was plenty of days where I let it, I let it ruin, and
Yep.
uh, yeah, I think learning from that experience was huge, and
Yeah.
I think that most young people should get some sort of a job like that. Just learn what the
I
real
agree.
world is like.
I agree.
Like it's
That
not just
motivates you
yeah, for sure. Yeah, don't want to be stuck doing that the rest of your life. At
for
least
sure.
I didn't.
Now, what's your favorite childhood memory?
Mhm. So when I lived in Dubuque, Iowa, we lived on a cul-de-sac, right? And it was a very family-friendly neighborhood. A lot of kids that were like my age. I was probably like between the ages of 8 and 10. And we would set up. There was a basketball hoop in the cul-de-sac, and then my dad got made like a hockey goal out of PVC pipe and some netting. And we put it down there and just play until the sun went down and parents were yelling to come back in. Like I don't even know if kids do that anymore. I look around my neighborhood and it's like, we're
It's
just
weird now. It's
stuck
weird.
inside with your screens and stuff. Like I don't
I
know.
know. It's definitely weird nowadays. Now, if you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Berlin, Germany.
Why is that?
Uh, I just I just love this city. There's just a magic to, I think, Northern Europe, especially in the summertime.
Uh,
Just, the feel of the air and, um, you know, I don't know. I describe Berlin, I think, how a lot of people describe Paris, about how there's just like a magical energy
yeah.
about it. And for me, I found that, I've been to Paris and I didn't necessarily experience it there, but I did experience in Berlin. And it was, one of the things that I can say about European people, at least in my experience, and I'm not trying to make overgeneralizations here, but my
Mhm.
experience says that European people walk around as if everything's going to be okay. And Americans are the exact opposite. The sky is falling.
Wow,
Everything's going to
that's
go
facts.
to shit
Wow.
very, very quickly, right? In Europe, Europeans are just like calm, cool, collected. It's all going to be good.
Wow. For real. Now, what was your favorite subject in school, Will?
So, economics, um, but I also kind of got into um, like music stuff. I took music theory and I sang in the choir and I played viola
Wow.
when I was younger
I
and
played the trumpet.
yeah, I don't know, music is always something that kind of has spoke to me in a certain way. Um and I don't know, I kind of carry some of that. I like to still kind of dabble with it, um, kind of as a hobby. But I think that people have said music is math also, right? Like,
Oh, yeah?
well, think about there's
Yeah, yeah.
16th notes and then
Yeah,
there's eighth notes and then there's half notes
that's true.
um, and I've heard it explained another way that, like, if you were to take one of the instruments and pull it out of the ensemble, right, and have that one play, and then you took another instrument out and had it play, and you would have a different experience completely, as if you heard everything all together.
That's very true.
And I
Yep.
think that's, in my opinion, that's God working through others in a way, like seeing
Mhm,
how we can all be a part of something that can be so beautiful, yet we're all doing separate things.
mhm. Now, would you say you're an introvert or extrovert?
I think that I'm like right on the line. I really do. If you would have asked me this like 5 or 10 years ago, I would have said introvert. Um, but I don't know, I found in I guess, my maturity that, and being, I think, a little bit more self-aware, I have a lot of extrovert tendencies, and so yeah, I know that's a kind of a cop out answer to that question, but I really do think I'm a little of each.
Now, if you won $10 million tomorrow, what would you spend it on? Being a wealth advisor, I had to ask you this.
I have to spend it all, or
Um,
can I do anything with it?
uh, I mean, you can do anything you want with it.
Um, I would invest in myself. Um,
Yeah, facts.
you know, uh, put some into my business. Um, put some of it into maybe some more education. Uh, getting gym memberships and just getting super healthy and because I really do think especially for us young folks. I mean, we've got a long road ahead of us, and I don't think it's going to be an easy one. And I think you gotta be ready to
Hmm.
with all of your faculties to problem solve the ever living crap out of all the things that are coming down the line. And so, and the best way you can do that, I believe, is by taking care of your household first. And so,
Hmm.
yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, hey, that was great. Sorry, I know we went a little bit over time, man, but I definitely do appreciate all of these answers. Believe it or not, I now understand what you do.
Perfect.
So that was good. So we definitely completed the mission here. So thank you again so much, Will. I'll see you soon, man. Is there anything else you want to say to the audience? He does have a book as well, so if you want to go ahead and let people know how they can get that.
Yeah, so my book is atlasshift.com. That'll just forward you to the Amazon page. So if you want to look through it, I mean, it says a little bit about it on the book, but one of the things that I'm really proud of is that there's lots of really good reviews on there. And so if you're willing to buy my book and leave me a review, that would be awesome. Because I'm really, the book is a few years old at this point, but it is still, kind of like my walking business card. I put a
Hmm.
lot of work into it, and I'm very proud of it. So,
That's awesome. Well,
so
thank you again, Will. We'll be talking soon. All right, brother.
thanks, Jordy.
Take care. All right, y'all. So there you have it, Mr. Will Rasman. That was amazing, guys. Go get his book. I'm gonna post everything on how you can contact him if you want to talk to him directly. I'm sure he wouldn't mind. 5, 10 minutes. Just tell him that you saw him here on my show, and I'm sure he would definitely take some time out to talk to you guys. So as you know, I am the health insurance dad. If you guys need any help with health insurance, have any questions, if you want me to take a look at your policy or anything like that, I'll do it. Free consultation, no worries. So until next time, you guys take care.